Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, May 26th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about planting into cover crop residue, thirst waves, like heat waves, but thirsty, and what it was like to leave the city all those years ago and start farming. So let's do it. All right, so happy Monday, everyone. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. I was relatively, honestly, out of commission for much of the weekend. With the cold, you can still maybe hear a little bit. So most of it was spent resting and watching soccer and wishing I could do more physically, but resting is probably not the worst idea. I'm not really that good at being down. I really want to do work, but that's how it goes sometimes. But I feel mostly good now, ready to roll on into this week and get a bunch of beds prepped and planted. That's going to be the big task for today. I have a bunch of empty beds that need stuff in them. I need to get the irrigation situation squared away as well, because although it's going to be another nice week here, that niceness is not likely to last, and the lettuce is going to start needing a little bit of extra TLC soon. Moisture-wise, the garden has had more than enough of that, but it's the cooling down of the garden that will need to be taken care of in short order, and by that I just mean like the ability to mist it. But also, I'm not going to lie, besides the unbelievable amounts of rain we've had, the temperatures have been quite friendly this May. So all in all, spring has been, spring. So that's good. Summer, we'll see what you do. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about this week, continuing a bit on our theme of cover crops, is how and what to plant into a thick cover crop mulch, plus general things to keep in mind about it. First, I want to emphasize that unless you know you have all the weeds under control where the cover crop was grown, the chances of the dead residue being an adequate enough mulch are actually somewhat low, especially in warmer climates where the warmer soil will germinate weeds at a slightly lower level and the mulch will decompose more rapidly. For a quick round of determinate tomatoes, that may work. For a long season indeterminate tomato or pumpkins, or basically anything over like 65 or 70 days to maturity, those weeds could become a major headache poking through the mulch. To me, the mulch is just a part of the cover crop. The soil health, i.e. what's happening below ground, well, that's the point of the cover crop more so than the mulch layer. You may just want a supplemental mulch like straw or hay just to lightly top it off. Also, the soil will be cooler beneath the cover crop, so some crops may be slower into production after transplanting or sowing. I remember when I was first learning to plant into cover crops during my apprenticeship that we transplanted tomatoes into a really nice rye vetch cover crop, and the transplants themselves suffered heavily when they went into the cold soil. They ultimately rebounded, but it was an iffy situation there for a minute. Now, if I'm transplanting tomatoes into a cover crop, I usually tarp the cover crop to warm it, but I'll also dig the holes sometimes a full day ahead of time on warm days, so at least that immediate planting hole it won't shock the tomato plant. Also, it will take a bit of time for the nutrients that the cover crops gathered when they were growing with their roots to become available to the next crop. In the case of something like rye, winter wheat, or whatever, those nutrients will still largely be locked up for a little while, so a little compost at the transplanting area will help kick that crop off the right way. Speaking of, what about transplanting versus direct seeding? While technically there are crops that you can directly seed into mulches, like say corn or beans, it's not going to be easy to drill them in once the cover crop is already down unless you have a special tool for that. My friend Susanna Lane of Salamander Springs often broadcasts her beans into the cover crop before she terminates it, like throws it into the standing cover crop, which she then terminates with a large oak pallet like the hardcore human that she is. You could also pull the cover crop aside, put a little compost down as a mulch, and then sow squash or whatever it is that you're wanting to sow into that compost, as long as you can keep the compost itself moist, because compost does have a tendency to dry out. Otherwise, though, without a proper seed drill, directly seeding on a small scale into a cover crop is generally not going to be the way within, cover crop mulches. Most people are transplanting when planting into a cover crop mulch. We usually just pull the cover crop aside, dig a hole, and plant a tomato or a pepper or whatever it is we plan to plant. Sometimes we will plant winter squash if it's a good stand and we feel good about the weed suppression. What some folks do is terminate the cover crop and then cover that cover crop with compost and then plant into that, which is fine. Kind of like an in situ sort of lasagna gardening, which is cool if you have the compost. With a winter kill cover crop, you're just kind of raking off that residue if you want. You can leave it there, but it's going to be in the way if you have to cultivate it all. But you usually rake off the residue, and then all you need to do is go ahead and plant, because usually the tilt is really nice after that. But when you have several inches of, say, like rye mulch in the way, it's a different story for sure. So let me know your thoughts or experiences or questions on planting into cover crops. Any techniques I missed, any successes or failures that you would like to share, let me know. And we'll talk about those maybe on Friday for Feedback Friday, conveniently. Otherwise, it's break time. And when we come back, thirst is literally sweeping the nation. Literally. BRB.
I left the hall light on in case you come back home.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Alexandra Powell, who asks, quote, "Hi, Jesse. Thanks for producing such an amazing podcast. I love listening in every day. The humor, technical detail, and farm nerdiness are much appreciated. This isn't a question, but a topic I'd be interested to hear covered on the podcast. I've never heard of these thirst waves before, which describe what seem to be periods of intense evapotranspiration from soil. I just read this short article here, and Alexandra links an article from phys.org that I will link in the show notes. Perhaps you could do a deeper dive into what these thirst waves are and how they could impact farmers. Thanks," end quote. Okay, thank you, and great and fascinating topic. I love it. I love topic suggestions. So whenever you have those Patreon members, feel free to get them in there. So you've heard of heat waves, no doubt, when substantial sustained periods of heat sweep through a given area. Well, thirst waves are sort of like heat waves, only instead of heat coming in, it's water going out. Basically, what happens in one of these events is that due to a combination of heat, humidity, wind speeds, and solar radiation, maybe some other things, water is lost from the ground at significant rates through evaporation. Essentially, crops slash plants are getting stressed and overheated from those elements, and when that happens, they do what is called evapotranspiration to cool themselves. You can kind of think of it like we sweat when we're hot. Plants, well, they evapotranspirate. Effectively, they kind of release water to cool themselves off. At that time, however, they are not growing, and they are also releasing soil moisture into the atmosphere. A little evapotranspiration is fine and totally normal, but too much can lead to declines in yields and water loss. In a thirst wave, this effect is amplified and extended for at least 3 days, but often more. And these are not new, but what the research is showing, this is one from Kukel and Hubbins, is that, quote, "Not only have thirst waves increased in severity, but the likelihood of no thirst waves occurring during the growing season has significantly decreased." Basically, we are likely to see more intense thirst waves more often for longer durations, and there are fewer places where there will be no thirst waves, which in terms of agriculture, and not to get too sciencey here, but that is, these periods of evapotranspiration basically mean that your plants will be losing a lot of water, pulling a lot of water out of the soil, and also not growing very much, if at all. The effect on agriculture productivity during these periods is profoundly negative. The need for more water
irrigation, increases significantly. Of course, although atmospheric demand for water is not a new concept, the idea of these thirst waves, especially as something that will be happening with greater frequency and intensity, is a relatively new idea, or at least it's a new framing. And so the studies on the effects are admittedly somewhat nascent. We've identified them, or these researchers have, but we don't really know what the long-term effects are or how much worse they're going to get. Approaches to mitigating these events, besides, changing everything about how the world grows food, is likewise not super well understood. We don't know, for instance, how farmers who use no-till practices, conventional or otherwise, are impacted by the waves. We don't know how much more, for example, windbreaks mitigate the stress, or cover crops, or alley cropping, or any of the more environmentally, ecologically responsible agricultural approaches. We know these things help temper heat, water, and wind stress, but within a thirst wave, it's not really known. What we do know is that this is likely to continue in a trend toward more and more atmospheric demand for water, thirst waves, which will in turn put more and more stress on plants and food production and farmers. We also know that good agriculture, land management, forest and animal husbandry, water management, and city design could all help, at very least, temper chaotic climatic events like these, but we are not doing any of that on any sort of respectable scale yet. More often than not, we are just contributing to the chaotic weather through deforestation, land degradation, all those fun things. Thirst waves, heat waves, tornadoes, floods, this is all really just part of, it's a choice that we are making to not maximize our verdant, abundant, self-regulating planet in favor of cheap things. Food, clothing, appliances, and in the future, our kids will throw stuff at us for our inaction. Hard stuff. That's really all I'm saying. Anyway, not sure I can top that cheeriness, but I will try in the next section about leaving the big city to farm. That seems poignant. Be right back.
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. Today's episode is also brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. All right, back to the show. So I realized the other day that I tell a lot of stories at the end of the show, but I don't tell that many actual stories, like nonfiction, as it were. So let me take you back. In early 2010, I've arrived for my first day of farming, whatever that might mean, at my apprenticeship in Bug Tussle, Kentucky. I really wanted this opportunity. I worked really hard to be chosen as an apprentice for this job. This was a biodynamic farm in my home state, and after 4 years of living in New York City, I was pretty much done and really just needed to leave. I felt depressed almost always. I was sick all too often. I wanted to better understand where my food came from and have more control over it. I just did not feel good, and I frankly needed a change. So I applied for an internship and managed to land it, even having zero farming or gardening experience, save for growing an unnecessary amount of hot peppers with my mom one year when I was probably 12. And to be frank, after that first week, I was convinced I'd made a huge mistake, like a big one. My body ached from the work every single night, and I felt physically strapped to the bed at the end of each workday. We would start at 7 and go until the late afternoon with a significant break in the middle. All the work was hotter, harder, and heavier than anything I'd ever done before, at least for that amount of time. I knew almost immediately, without question, farming was important work, but there was no way farming was for me. Period. But
I don't like to quit things. So I figured I committed to do an entire season to this family. So I figured I would stick it out, get some good exercise, eat some great food, learn from these lovely folks who I was working for, and then reassess in the fall. Probably get back to something more my speed, whatever that meant. Otherwise, this had all just been a grave miscalculation. I was not a farmer. After the second week of starting soil blocks, planting lettuces, hoeing, moving animals, cutting firewood, working from dawn to dusk, I was still tired, but having fun, like enjoying it. I was loving the meals together. Another intern had showed up, so I at least had some company. I really started to love the animals too, the baby chicks, then soon the baby turkeys. I loved the pigs. I loved the sheep and the cattle. I started to become fascinated by the dung beetles and the wasps who lived in my room, but for whatever reason would leave me alone. I was fascinated by the black snakes, the wolf spiders, the ladybugs, but always, I was obsessed with the food. I have this vivid memory of one of the more tired days I had out there. I think we were planting strawberries, and the 6-year-old of the family, Ira, he came up to me, came running up with like a raw purple spear of asparagus that he'd just snagged out of the garden. And I ate it, and I remember it feeling like medicine. Not in the traditional sense, like of course you are what you eat and food is medicine and all that good stuff, but it felt like medicine in almost like the spiritual sense. Here I was completely exhausted, disappointed in myself for having put myself in this situation to spend the next 6 months nearly beaten to death, only to be holding the reason for all of it, food. Good food, not good food, great food. The best food I'd literally ever eaten in my life in every single form. The best tomatoes, the best cucumbers, the best watermelon, the best asparagus. The adjustment was brutal for sure, like physically. In New York, I was a runner, but I did not do any amount of real physical labor. I was not strong and I was decidedly not hardy. But I look back at those first weeks and that first year and how my attitude shifted as my body acclimated to a feeling of, well, this is impossible, to a feeling of, I cannot imagine ever not growing food. I was not a resilient person when I arrived, but I found a lot of joy in that first year of farming, my hardening off period, as it were. Hard as it was, I wouldn't take it back for the world. We as a society are enamored with making everything more convenient and easier, and I think it's easy to forget the rewards of difficult work. And few jobs exemplify this quite like farming, where at the end of the hard day is also the best tomato sandwich you've ever eaten. So, I guess I'm curious, what was your first week or weeks of farming like? Did you have an, oh boy, I think I goofed moment like I did? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I think we're going to call it a Monday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You could learn more about how to do that in the let's say the show notes. That seems like a good place. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's always an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook of the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, soon to be June, can you believe it? You get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Caroline Scully and Phil Lang. Great novelistic names here. Well done, you all. All right, so I feel like this week's story is a cross-country bike ride. Basically, Caroline and Phil are starting out on the West Coast somewhere, let's say, I don't know, San Diego, and plan to ride all the way to Charleston, South Carolina, because why the heck not? It's supposed to be a cool town, right on the ocean, lots of good food, some good seafood, worth it. Anyway, they plan to take a cross-country bike ride and pick up some joiners along the way, no doubt, people that sign up for the Patreon page. Probably. And probably get into some of that, good trouble that you get into when you're on the road. That's the plan, at least, and it's going fine for quite a while. I mean, they make it all the way out of California and into the desert in Nevada that's when things get a little bit strange. But that is for tomorrow on Pedal to the Metal. But like with metal spelled M-E-T-T-L-E. Like it's a pun. Dads are going to love that. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Tuesday. Yep. Second day of the week. Awesome.